In Tanzania lives two men. This is Hatibu Hussein Kifunza.
Mimi naitwa Hatibu Hussein Kifunza.
And this is Hamis Saidi Mbole.
Naitwa Hamis Saidi Mbole.
Men who spent 20 years on the death row.
Kuna siku maalum kama siku za Jumamosi.
They spent all those years not knowing whether they would survive the next day.
Sasa wakija kupima uzito, wote nyinyi mnashaka kama si leo, kesho.
Who are these people? How did they survive death? Up to date, there are more than 50 countries that have capital punishment as a penalty. In China, those who are sentenced to death are executed by shooting, where in the US is by lethal injection, whereas Singapore it's hanging. This is the penalty Hussein and Hamis were given. But what kind of criminal offense that can lead to capital punishment?
Mimi nikahukumiwa adhabu ya kifo. Nikapelekwa Ukonga. Huyu bwana amefika pale 83.
Hussein studied until primary 7 in the capital of Dar es Salaam. He had 6 houses in this city in which he rented them all, and that's where all the trouble originated.
Mimi katika ile nyumba nilikuwa naishi ilikuwa na vyumba 6.
I had 6 houses and another where I lived. Next to me were my tenants. Among my tenants, there's the one who told us that he works at a place called Texteri. One day, soldiers came for him, asked for what he does, and he said he's just a tenant. They told the man to call the landlord, and I arrived as quickly as possible. They asked if I knew that man, the tenant. I told them all I knew, and they said the man is accused of murder. It is said he robbed and killed someone and came to hide here, and other crime partners were also arrested. Soldiers detained all of us, and after a few days, 2 more were caught, making them 6 in total. They were both accused of a murder case, and since I gave one of them a house, I became the victim. After detaining us, I never returned home. Up to then, the man was innocent and thought it was kind of a joke. Days passed and they went to court, and were later sentenced. He was shocked seeing the court's final decision of the case. After the judgment, they took us to PI prison, and I was found guilty of aiding those men to commit murder out of the blue. They took us to Ukwanga prison, and later we were taken to Tanga Maweni prison. By when he was given a capital punishment, he could not believe it, as this is the worst punishment in countries that authorize it. The death penalty is nothing new, as it has existed even before Christ. And to Bible readers, John the Baptist was sentenced to die and subsequently beheaded by Herod Antipas around 30 AD. Death sentence is also known as the capital punishment. People are executed using different methods. Before, it was burning people alive, exposing people to wild animals, to shooting, and now lethal injections. Hatibu Hussein started worrying. As days passes, one of his inmates is executed. Among those whom they were detained together, 3 remained with him. Others were taken to different prisons, and 3 were released even before going to court. In other maximum prisons like in Tabora, Mwanza, and Dodoma, they were told those who are sentenced to die are automatically executed. But for us, we survived by God's mercy, and others were set free. In 1991, some of us were executed in Dodoma. I will never forget that year. My best friend Enrique Kifaru, who lives rent-free in my mind, was taken and executed in Tanga. In 1992, 6 more inmates were added, and 2 were killed right in front of our eyes, and we survived. In 1993 up to 1995, inmates were killed, and you never saw who killed them since they had masks on so as not to be identified. We always knew that we are next, but luckily God helped. Living a life while you are waiting to be executed is difficult. And the 2 says they had a worse and terrible day, which was every Saturday evening. That's when people were executed. They would come for us, And if you survived today, you knew that you would not make it the next day. Everyone prayed and wept in their own languages. If you are an Indian, an Arab, or a Tanzanian, each suffered their own way. Though it's like that, having spent a long time together, they became friends. Some were soldiers, others were politicians, thieves, and all kinds of people. But in prison, they lived as one.
Mpaka 2005 marehemu Mkapa ndio alinitoa kutoka kifungo cha kunyongwa mpaka kuja maisha.
Hussein and the friend were given presidential pardon by Benjamin Mkapa, and in 2005 the death sentence was taken off and given no more imprisonment.
Toka mwaka 92
years went by and another president gave the pardon and they were released.
Nimekaa kule kwa muda miaka tokea hapo sikutoka tena mpaka 2017 kwa msamaha wa rais marehemu Mheshimiwa John Pombe Magufuli. Nilitoka 2017 tarehe 9 Disemba, sikukuu ya uhuru, ndio nilipotoka 2017.
Hussein says when given such a penalty, you always want to commit suicide, but due to maximum security, there are no ways. They say no one deserves to die and request the government to abolish capital punishment. He asks his country leaders to abolish this punishment.
Wakati mwingine nishaona mtu amefikiria mawazo, amekufa tu hivi vitu kajifia hivi hata hicho kitanzi chenyewe, na asi alikuwa sio mtu wa kunyonga, lakini ile shock anaipata.
One of the inmates who was with him in prison fainted after what he saw, and from there he became deaf, got ill, taken to hospital, and later died without even saying a word, all due to depression. You might think it's a movie. At some point, you think of taking drugs, but no drugs available, and you think of going to the hospital and inject yourself, but still impossible. There are 7 soldiers who are always watching you, and when you fake being sick, they figure it out. And even when the doctor confirms, 3 soldiers are there monitoring you 24/7, yet you are always under cuffs. Food was terrible. We drank porridge without sugar in the morning, and sometimes ugali. The prison was always unlocked and no one escaped. But where would you escape to? For instance, I was released and found everything had changed, but I didn't even know where to go. Had I escaped, I would be caught and then executed. Hussein later lost his mind as he was waiting to be executed, knowing he was innocent. After his release, he found when his brothers had sold everything at a low price. Since he was scared of prison, he never took them to courts and lives with his mother since he went to prison before getting married, and says he will never get married. His friend Saidi got married, produced 3 children, and 2 only remains. Due to too much depression, Hussein no longer controls his urinary system. He sometimes urinates on himself, and Saidi is asking good Samaritans to help the friend. Hussein says with capital, he can find a business to run. As he says, he's living only by God's grace. In prison, he learned how to manufacture oil from plants, but lacks capital. With capital, he can improve his standards of living. The 2 had a good friendship in prison and thanked the government for their release.
Ikabidi mimi na huyu bwana tuko maeneo tunashinda pamoja. Swala la kula pamoja. Kila kitu pamoja.
They lived together in prison and are now still living together after prison.
Nashukuru Mungu, kweli gereza lina matatizo yake.
I thank God. A lot happens in prison, but there is one you meet an important friend there. I was set free in 2017. Thank you for watching. I'm Elijah and this is Afrimax English. Remember to subscribe.